Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather, 16th day of September 2021. I'm Dave, finally got his hair cut, Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, on the hazardous weather graphics, there are no public watches, advisories, or warnings out anywhere around the state for tonight through tomorrow, and probably through the weekend as well, the way it looks at this point in time anyway. North looking pretty good there as far as advisories go, or watches, warnings, that type of thing, as well as the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. This photo is the UAFTV sea ice webcam, if I pronounced it right, formerly known as Barrow, if I butchered the name too bad there. That was this morning, late morning, carrying moderate snow, temperature about 34 degrees, 33, 34 degrees there. And then about 4 hours later, you can see a little bit of thawing took place. Obviously, the moderate snow ended, just light snow now, visibility a lot better. And you can see some of the melt back occurring. Temperatures had popped up into the 36, 37 degree range, but generally northwest winds 15, maybe 20 miles an hour at the most, or 10 to 20, or out of the northeast, I believe. And with the temperatures mid to upper 30s, kind of a heavy wet snow that can melt easily, as it seems to be doing now. Otherwise, from there, that's kind of just a scene of things to come here up there as we slide in toward late September now, toward the first day of fall. Otherwise, satellite imagery showing front and moisture moving in toward the Panhandle and hanging up along the North Gulf Coast there, the main low center east of Kodiak, and rains ended there. And you can see quite an area clearing back west of the Kuskokwim Mountains in the Kuskokwim Valley on down toward Togiak there in Cape Newenham, the southern Kuskokwim Bay. Not too bad in the Bethel area. Also clear skies earlier on. Cloud temperatures fall in the lower 20s over the Yukon Flats. One of the colder spots, 23 at Chalk Yitzhak for their overnight low, and 20s were seen back over the clear areas along the Kuskokwim, Yukon River Valley areas overnight with the clear skies. Otherwise, temperatures bouncing back in the mid to upper 50s over the central interior with sunshine this afternoon. You can see clouds, though, Fairbanks mid and high level clouds spreading north of the Alaska Range, with the heaviest rainfall occurring on the eastern North Gulf Coast there, with Yakutat picking up about 2/3 of an inch of precipitation, a little over 6/10 of an inch. 12-hour period ending at mid-afternoon today, and otherwise 1/4 of an inch fell in Juneau, and Petersburg picked up 3/10 of an inch of precipitation. Lighter amounts down south. Ketchikan 1/10 of an inch. That was about the heaviest amount down there. Others had less than that. And winds kicking up along the coast there. Gales or gusts of 50 miles an hour at Cape Decision. Cape Spencer had peak wind gusts 31 miles an hour. Middleton Island seeing gusts 45 miles per hour there. Expected to increase tonight. Looking for storm warnings tonight for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Gale warnings all across the Panhandle tonight and into the western North Gulf Coast as well. Otherwise, up to the north, a lot of clouds there coming in, caught up westerly flow along the Arctic coast there, and more of a kind of a southerly flow along the eastern Arctic coast, North Slope areas. That brought a fair amount of rain in with those clouds. 4/10 of an inch falling at Utagavik, Point Barrel, let's call it that. And all that fell as snow, but again, it was heavy, wet snow, temperatures ranging from 33 to 36, 37 degrees up and down throughout the day. Dead Horse had about 1/3 of an inch of all rain, no snow reported there, and mostly rain back along the western Arctic coast, as well as areas in over the North Slope, Atasuk and Umiat Airfield. Even though temperatures are just a little above freezing, they're reporting light rain there. And then back to the west, Pribilofs, north winds, 35 mile an hour in gusts, with about 1/4 of an inch of precipitation falling there with some showers. Let me back that up one more there. And much tighter gradient, though, over the central Aleutians. Atka, north winds gusting 53 miles an hour, peak wind gusts there coming up. Nikolsky now gaining gusts 45 miles an hour. And St. George Island, gust 45 miles an hour out of the north and northeast, and then the winds drop off as you head up toward the Bering Strait. For tonight, those will continue to drop off. High pressure moves into the central Aleutians, just south of Adak and Atka, so definitely winds will drop off completely, kind of go light and variable with maybe some good clearing there before the clouds with the next system roll in late tonight, but all of the Aleutians looking pretty good. Showers lingering, but conditions improving. Winds lightening up for the Alaska Peninsula slowly, but staying wet on the Bering Sea side, but nothing heavy. Showers along the southwest coast. Taper off into the Bering Strait there, Seward Peninsula. Dry central eastern interior. Rain chances linger along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and still some shower chances. Moisture might circulate back in and around Kodiak Island for periods of rain or showers, light rain or showers, with breezy conditions there. Gale warnings, Panhandle, gusts 50 miles an hour along the coast, and storm warnings tonight for the eastern North Gulf Coast tomorrow. That system continues to push eastward there and weakens, kind of east-southeast movement there, right west of the Queen Charlotte's, the main frontal boundary, south of the Dixon entrance now. And rain continues over the southern southeast coast, but it'll begin to lighten up and winds won't be a problem at all. Scatters out to showers as you head north, maybe some clearing, Lincoln Glacier Bay, Elephant Cove, possible clearing North Gulf Coast as well, but definitely much drier day tomorrow with less wind. Copper River Basin could see some afternoon sun breaks, scattered showers over the interior, rain and snow. A couple of systems coming in from the west and northwest. Keep that chance going there. Another batch coming onto the western Arctic coast. And the next system pushing northeastward, bringing gale force winds, rain to the western and then central Aleutians, as a pretty nice day is in store for the Fox Islands tomorrow. And then for Saturday, switch it back. Strong winds and rain, moderate to heavy at times. Eastern Aleutians spreading into the Alaska Peninsula, southern Bering Sea. Strong northerlies on the back side of that system, probably even stronger than what you saw today. Could possibly be storm force winds in the narrow band and that tighter gradient there on the western side as higher pressure builds in over the Komodorskis and western Aleutian areas. Up to the north, warm front spreading rain into the Norton Sound area, across the Seward Peninsula overnight Friday night, and then kind of in between in the warm sector there. So shouldn't be a bad day for St. Lawrence Island. Mild, maybe some sunshine, light winds, and rain for the western Arctic coast and the northwestern valleys. Colder air back behind that cold front, mixed it in with snow, or becomes just plain snow there as colder air mass. That's the leading edge of a colder air mass that's going to be shifting in and taking over the northern half of the state here into later part of the weekend, first part of next week. Otherwise, for Saturday, first day of the weekend, looking really good for south central Alaska, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, mostly sunny, dry conditions, lingering showers, Copper River Basin up the eastern interior there from the eastern Alaska Range to Eagle, actually all the way up to Old Crow, eastern Arctic coast. And that system off the Panhandle kind of just weakening in place there, keeps a chance of a lessening chance of light rain over the southern southeast coast, basically dry up to the north with an isolated shower or two. But the northern Bering Sea looking really good, as well as out west. Taking a look at low temperatures for tonight, mid to upper 40s there across the southeast coast, and upper 30s to mid 40s, southern Alaska, closer to freezing in the Copper River Basin, definitely into the 30s, Kuskokwim Valley. 38 to 42 for Bristol Bay, upper 40s Kodiak Island, the warmer location. Highs tomorrow, upper 50s there for Kodiak Island, mid to upper 50s across the Panhandle, mid 50s areas east and south of the Alaska Range. To the west, though, upper 40s for the Kuskokwim Valley, lower 50s Bristol Bay, followed by lows on Saturday morning, mid 30s Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley, maybe in the Kenai Peninsula, upper 20s now in the Kuskokwim Valley, with lower 30s, dropping below the freeze point there in Bristol Bay, King Salmon, Dillingham down to 30, 31 there, but mid 40s Kodiak Island, and in the 40s for the Panhandle. Highs for Saturday afternoon, near 50 Copper River Basin, lower to mid 50s South Central Alaska, upper 40s, mid to upper 40s for the Kuskokwim Valley, lower 50s Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, mid to upper 50s for the southeast coast. Lows tonight, upper 20s to mid 30s for the North Slope and Brooks Range and the Arctic coast, with 30s through the interior, mid to upper or lower to mid, depending on your location there, followed by highs back into the mid to upper 50s, central eastern interior areas, 30s for the Arctic coast, North Slope, lower 40s, lower to mid 40s, Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island, upper 40s, northern Kuskokwim Valley. And then lows definitely 20s, starting to become a little more widespread here along the Arctic coast into the Brooks Range, even the Kobuk Valley, Koyukuk Valley, Bettles forecast low 29, McGrath 29 for the lows, otherwise in the lower to mid 30s, and highs 40s to near 50 south of the Brooks Range, north side there in the 30s, and out to the southwest, lows tonight, mid to upper 40s, coldest actually northern Bering Sea, mid 30s, and then lower 40s for the southwest coast, near 50 to Alaska Peninsula, highs 50-55 for the Alaska Peninsula, mid to upper 40s for the southwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, lower 50s for the Aleutians and Pribilofs. Lows Saturday morning, mid 40s, Pribilofs, upper 40s for the Aleutians, or mid to upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, 30s over the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. First graphic tomorrow morning, IFR, Arctic coast, North Slope down into the northern Koyukuk Valley, and then a band of marginal VFR extending southward across the mid and lower Yukon River Valley, Kuskokwim Mountains, down to Bristol Bay, or I'm sorry, north of Bristol Bay, splits off there. Kuskokwim Bay and northern Bering Sea back through the Bering Strait and the western Arctic coast, including Kivalina there in the northwest coast. And otherwise, Cook Inlet VFR and Susitna Valley interior, eastern interior there, VFR. Some IFR over the Talkeetnas, IFR, southern Prince William Sound, and part of the North Gulf Coast there. And then looks like mostly VFR over the Panhandle, some IFR, Stewart and Hyder toward that area. Then for the afternoon, Friday, kind of shaping up like this, pretty solid IFR now for the southern Panhandle. Marginal VFR northward there, becoming VFR, Lincoln Glacier Bay, eastern North Gulf Coast VFR. Areas of marginal VFR and VFR scattered in the interior, then IFR, Arctic coast, and east and west North Slope. Otherwise, northern Bering Sea, southwest coast, St. Lawrence, Nunivak Islands, into Bristol Bay, marginal VFR, including Iliamna Lake, Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska Range, up to around Windy Pass, and then IFR over the western central Aleutians and Atka marginal, but the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Pribilofs, looking at VFR afternoon, including Kodiak Island. And VFR holds for Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, into Saturday morning northward there into south central Alaska. Narrow band of VFR up into the central interior, but IFR now, central Arctic coast, southwestward, Kotzebue Sound, northern Seward Peninsula, all of the Noatak Valley, northwest coast, St. Lawrence Island, part of the Yukon Delta, north side there, and marginal VFR eastern interior with IFR from the eastern Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast. Now some IFR lingering over the southern Panhandle, otherwise looks pretty good for the morning Saturday. VFR, IFR in the Aleutian southern Bering Sea shifts east and a little to the northeast throughout the afternoon. Saturday, you can see we actually makes a pretty good jog to the east there from the Kulski, covering the most of the western central Alaska Peninsula by afternoon, including the Pribilofs. IFR northern Bering Sea, and then that narrow band extending northwestward to the central Arctic coast. Marginal VFR becomes VFR for much of the eastern interior. Southern Alaska VFR, most of the Panhandle VFR, except down south. Marginal VFR, some IFR around Prince of Wales Island. And for passes, Anatuvik, IFR, Adigan, both Anatuvik, Adigan, occasional IFR throughout the day Friday. Lake Clark and Merrill, mostly marginal at times, either approach through Friday. For tomorrow, same thing for rainy, occasional marginal VFR. Windy also, looks marginal at times, as does Isabel. Mentasta, VFR, possible marginal VFR southern approach. Otherwise pretty good there. Tanita, marginal VFR at times, and VFR at other times throughout the day Friday. Portage, marginal VFR holding on the eastern entrance, but improvement through the pass in general to VFR during the afternoon. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet northern Bering Sea and the western North Slope Arctic coast, Seward Peninsula, a little under that, and then 2,000 to 4,000 feet down across the eastern Bering Sea, 6,000 feet in the Gulf of Alaska, otherwise around 4,000 central and southern Alaska, including the Panhandle. Icing, look for a pretty good zone of moderate rime icing coming into the western central Aleutians with that system farther to the southwest, and mostly icing action will be south of the Panhandle, just elevated threat of some isolated moderate possible, mostly light of the mixed variety central southern southeast coast, and then some areas, again, just a slight chance of some icing possibilities there over the north slope, and then coming onto the western Arctic coast. Jet stream, northwest flow 70 to 90 knots there into the Bering Strait, drops back to about northerly 40 to 50, and then really picks up northwest 150 knots across the Alaska Peninsula or stronger, and at main jet south of the Panhandle as is at 9,000 feet. Otherwise, west coast areas, west-northwest 25 to 40 knots right down across the Alaska Peninsula. Stronger system there over the western Aleutians, but the strongest winds to the south, although at 3,000 feet, easterlies 65 knots. Amchitka Island increasing for the Adak-Atka area, northerlies 30 to 45 knots. Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula results in moderate chop in those areas. Also from Atka westward to Shimianatu, moderate chop.
Hey friends, we ought to get ready for fall because the autumnal equinox hits next week on September 22nd. Equinox is Latin for equal night because daylight hours and nighttime hours at this time are equal. Also on the equinox, the sun rises exactly due east and sets exactly due west. This happens all over the planet, so it's a unifyingly amazing event. In the northern hemisphere, this marks the beginning of fall and onset of winter, but in the southern hemisphere, it's the start of spring. Viva! Even ancient cultures clocked the changing of the seasons by this special date. They'd build mounds and henges and posts, helping to track it and create the very first calendars, though today, you've got us. They say you can balance an egg on its end on the equinox, but that's just an urban legend. Instead of playing with ovums, head outside, enjoy the sunlight, and keep looking up.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and we have a special guest in the studio today. We welcome Amanda Terborg of the Aviation Weather Center. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amanda's flown in all the way from Kansas City, and for those of you that don't know, the Aviation Weather Center serves the lower 48 for aviators, just as the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit here in Anchorage serves all of Alaska. So I kind of wonder, what's the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City doing to help out Alaska, Amanda?
Yeah, you know, we do a lot of collaboration work with our sister station up here. Lately, we've been doing a lot of work, especially in the satellite meteorology.
Okay.
In particular, we have been looking at ways to better identify icing conditions in clouds, which is a big deal up here because, as I'm coming to find out, even though I'm not from here, you guys have a lot of pilots here.
You have a lot of pilots. In fact, when you say you can't get there from here, that's how you get there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so with icing potential then, what's Kansas City working on?
Well, we are working on something that will help us, again, identify the icing in the clouds. You don't want ice on your aircraft.
No.
Not only does it add a whole bunch of extra weight to your airframe when it attaches to the wings and the nose cone, but it can also mess with your aerodynamics.
Right.
And in the most serious conditions, that can mess with it enough that you can actually crash.
It changes the shape of the wing, and that makes it sometimes impossible to fly, right?
It does, yeah. So we want to figure out a way to better forecast for that.
Makes sense.
Now this particular image is over Alaska. The colors here are a little goofy. It doesn't look like your run-of-the-mill satellite image.
Okay.
But the red is where you have liquid clouds and the blue is ice. But again, it really doesn't tell you a lot where you have icing conditions in that cloud. Because in those clouds there's little droplets and they're cold and they're actually below freezing, but they're still liquid. And that makes them sticky.
Okay.
So when an aircraft flies through there, those droplets are sticking to the aircraft and it can happen amazingly fast.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to find. And there is a product called the Aircraft Flight Icing Threat that does this. And it's basically looking at the temperature of the cloud, and it's also looking at the size of the droplets to identify a probability and intensity of those icing conditions.
Okay.
And if you flip to the next image, this is a case from Juneau, Alaska, where this probably wouldn't have been the best day to fly around Juneau.
Okay.
Now there was an area of moisture that pushed south from the southwest up along the coast that pushed in a stratus layer. And in the stratus layer, there was a lot of those super cooled liquid drops, or a lot of stickiness.
Okay.
And so the flight icing threat was able to, in the pinks and the reds there, was able to identify where that icing was. Now this is really cool. You know, it's really cool to be able to identify that. There is, you know, of course, caveats to every product. Much as we wish it would happen, sun doesn't shine all the time, unless, I guess, if you live in northern Alaska during the summertime.
Right.
But we need that sun to be able to bounce off those clouds and to be able to see where those super cool drops are.
Okay, so it's a daytime only tool.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, of course, you know, we're in the era of advanced satellite technology, and there is a satellite that can actually use moonlight to see clouds.
Yes.
And so sometime in the future, we hope to be able to do that.
Okay.
Another thing that is a bit of a challenge is multiple layers of clouds. You know, you can only see so far through a thick cloud.
Okay.
And if it's thick enough, sometimes you can't see a layer of icing that's below there.
Right.
But even besides those caveats, this product has a lot of potential to help out Alaskan aviators here.
Well, it sounds like a really big deal, and something that forecasters at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit could use probably on a daily basis, and especially in the middle of a really big storm.
Yeah, I would think so.
Do you have a really good success story in the lower 48 using this tool?
You know, it's a fairly new product, and so we're still evaluating it. But yeah, we have had a lot of cases where we have seen that it does tend to capture those icing conditions.
Okay, very good. Well, Amanda, thanks so much for sharing some of the very interesting satellite imagery and the tools that you're using there at the Aviation Weather Center in Kansas City with us here in Alaska. People can probably find some of this information online, right?
Yeah, here is a website here. It's a page from NASA Langley, and they have this imagery as well as a bunch of other satellite imagery that you can take a look at.
Okay, great. And I'm sure our friends at the Alaska Aviation Weather Center and the unit will be using that in the coming months there with your training and your help there to learn more about that tool to help Alaska aviators any day of the year. That's wonderful stuff. So thanks again for joining us, Amanda, and we welcome you to view any of our Alaska weather facts on YouTube anytime at the address below, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, not a lot different from yesterday. Still well off all of the Arctic coast there. And it looks like with the cold air coming in for the Chukchi Sea, expecting that ice edge to advance southeastward 25 to 40 nautical miles through Monday, which will still leave it well off the coast. And then for the Beaufort Sea, maybe a retreat northward of 10 to 15 nautical miles or little change at all. So from there, moving on to the coastal water forecasts for the Panhandle. Winds coming down tomorrow. Strongest winds will be overnight tonight ahead of the front. Small craft advisories remain, though, on the north coast, 25 to 30 knots out of the east, 12-foot seas, and then lighter winds as you head south there, to 20 knots out of the southeast there off Prince of Wales Island. And small craft advisories for Clarence Strait, southeast 25, north 15 for Stevens Passage. A little brisker, 25-knot northwest winds, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern inner channels. And for tonight, or for Saturday, first day of the weekend, light northwest breeze on the north coast there at 10 knots. East to south winds at 15 knots for the south coast. Light variable winds, 10 knots or less, with seas slight through all of the inner channels, all the way from Dixon Entrance to Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay. And for the eastern North Gulf Coast, tonight there's storm warnings out, and then tomorrow those will come down to first drop to gales and then come down to 30 knots in the afternoon. Out of the east, 15 to 17-foot seas. Prince William Sound north at 20. Gale warnings continue for the western North Gulf Coast. Northeast 35 knots there. Small craft advisories, 30-knot winds. Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands, north winds 25 knots, southern Cook Inlet, north 15, north of Forelands. Northwest 20 knots, northern Cook Inlet on Saturday with 4-foot seas. 45 knots out of the northwest, just under storm force there for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. 14-foot seas, small craft advisories, western North Gulf Coast. Winds northwest at 25, east side there north at 20. Prince William Sound, northwest winds 20 knots, 4-foot seas. Kodiak Island, northwest winds 30 knots. Seas 12 feet. Northwest winds 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula with 10 to 11-foot seas, and Bristol Bay, northwest winds 30 knots, seas 8 feet. Saturday, 40-knot west winds in the forecast for Shelikof Strait, otherwise east side of Kodiak, 35-knot westerlies, And gale warnings for the Alaska Peninsula. Bering Sea side, they'll be out of the east, and south side, Pacific side, they'll be south 35 with 10-foot seas, and Bristol Bay northeast at 30 knots. On Alaska Island tomorrow, small craft advisories for northwest winds 25 knots, lighter there for Winmac Island, northwest at 20. And then gales on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula coming into the forecast there for Adak and Atka, not the Alaska Peninsula, Adak and Atka. And 40-knot winds pick up to 45 knots, all from the east there from Kiska to Shemya. And then those will swing around to northwest gales, Shemya to Adak, with seas right around 20 feet. Otherwise, Adak and Atka there, north to west at 40 knots, depending on which side of the islands you're on. Seas 14 to 21 feet. Gale warnings for the Fox Islands for southwest to southeast winds, 35 to 40 knots. For the southwest coast, small craft advisories, south of Nunivak Island, northwest 25 knots, otherwise northwest at 20. St. Lawrence Island, west at 20. St. Matthew Island, northwest 15. Pribilofs, west winds 20 knots, seas 6 feet. And then for Saturday, west winds at 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories, Kuskokwim Delta Coast, east winds 30 knots, chop that in half from the south. For the Yukon Delta Coast, north 15 for St. Matthew Island, gale force easterlies for the Pribilof Islands with 10-foot seas. And up north, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west-southwest 5 to 10 knots, pretty light there. Northwest 15 on the central coast, south 15 west side, 15 to 20 knot westerlies, Wales to Cape Beaufort. And then 15 knots from the northwest, Wales to Cape Beaufort on Saturday. Otherwise, west winds 15, west side, south, variable 10 to 15, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, south 20 in the central coast. Tonight, rain and snow up there, central or along the Arctic coast in the North Slope, and then rain, storm force winds tonight, eastern North Gulf Coast, sustained east 50 knots, and gales along the Panhandle, rain heavy at times. That improves tomorrow, though, with the system there west of the Queen Charlotte starting to weaken. Stays wet over the southern Panhandle, but lighter winds and drying out in the north. And maybe some clearing. North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, south central Alaska. Lingering showers over the mountainous terrain of the interior. And the next system out west makes a good jog to the east, bringing gale force winds into the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And the next system bringing more rain to the northwest Arctic coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.